The two ringleaders of the MAGA clown show, which is the Biden impeachment inquiry, appeared on the Fox propaganda network in a desperate but half-hearted attempt to revive this dead story, even as all indicators say that the American people and experts aren't interested. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video, but as a reminder, the Republican effort to impeach President Biden has just been one defeat after another, including this most recent one here.
Major breaking news. Former FBI informant Alexander Smirnov, who is accused of spreading false information about the Bidens, will now stay behind bars pending trial. Prosecutors raising serious concerns that if he was not remanded, he could have fled the country. The decision from Los Angeles Judge Otis Wright overhauling a Las Vegas federal magistrate that allowed him to stay out on bail.
And this is the guy, by the way, who provided the key allegations to the Republicans for their Biden impeachment inquiry, right? That was key. And we'll get into that as a reminder. Well, he was arrested for making false statements to the FBI, those allegations in question. He admitted while he was in FBI custody that he did so effectively on behalf of Russian intelligence, or that he was regurgitating Russian disinformation from Russian intelligence about Joe and Hunter Biden. And then he was taken back into custody because prosecutors had a credible reason to believe that he would try to flee the country. So that's not good. But James Comer and Jim Jordan were back on the Maria Bartiromo show, or whichever show he hosts on she hosts on the Fox propaganda network, trying to resuscitate the story. But you can see their heart's not in it anymore.
With Jim Biden, he said some things that aren't consistent with other people who we've interviewed, with other amounts of evidence that we have in the form of text messages and emails. And right now, as we speak, Maria, our staff's going over, reviewing all that to determine whether or not Jim Biden, in fact, told the truth in his transcribed interview.
So they're referring to Jim Biden, President Biden's brother, who they got to testify under oath. They have no evidence that he lied or committed any sort of misdeed. But again, they're desperate for something, right, to distract from what's going on with Alexander Smirnov, their key informant. The second key smoking informant, by the way, who's been indicted by the FBI, right? So they have a pretty weak track record with their smoking guns and key informants, but I digress. Here's another clip in which Jim Jordan also shows up and Maria Bartiromo asks them about this informant.
Well, Chairman Comer, your Democrat colleagues are mocking the investigation. You know that. They say it's all Russian disinformation. So give us your take on Mr. Smirnov now being indicted and saying that a Russian passed on the story. And I also want to get your take on this latest information that you have gotten from Mr. Galanis, who is still in prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all we knew about Smirnov was the 1023 allegation. We knew from FBI sources that the FBI had never investigated it. And all we knew was what Christopher Wray told us, that this informant was one of their most trusted and highest paid in the Bureau, and he had been in that position for over 10 years. So that's all we knew about him. He wasn't an important part of the case, but it was a tip that we should investigate. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to investigate every allegation of Biden influence peddling. With respect to Galanis, the individual we interviewed this past Friday, what we learned was very similar to what Tony Bobulinski said.
But produced no evidence, right? And now, so what's funny is two things that Comer said in that exchange. Number one, all we were told was that, that this FBI confidential source was credible, right? That's all we were told. And it was never that important to begin with. So first, I want to address the idea that all they were told by the FBI was that the source in question was credible, because that's not quite accurate. And this is from a Republican Congressman, Ken Buck.
Well, Caitlin, it's even more of an imagined history now. Obviously, this witness, and we were warned at the time that we received the document outlining this witness's testimony. We were warned that the credibility of this statement was not known. And yet people, my colleagues, went out and talked to the public about how this was credible and how it was damning and how it proved President Biden's, at the time, Vice President Biden's complicity in receiving bribes.
So they were told by the FBI that though the source had proven credible in the past, there was nothing verified about these specific allegations. And so the FBI would not attest to their credibility. They were specifically told, we don't know if these things are credible. Comer's leaving that part out. He was, well, all the FBI told me was that this guy was credible. That's not all you were told. And you went and peddled and signal boosted the disinformation anyway. Then with respect to the claim that, well, it really wasn't that important to us anyway. We've played this montage before. It's about 60 seconds long, but it's worth reviewing. That is emphatically not the case. Republicans repeatedly stress the importance of the 1023/Alexander Smirnov allegations for the past 6, 7, 8 months.
House Oversight Chairman James Comer says he and his colleagues plan to drop a bombshell.
It's going to be Judgment Day tomorrow for the White House.
You have the confidential FBI informant who's basically saying that Joe Biden took $5 million from Burisma.
The informant was a highly valued human source for the FBI.
A trusted, highly credible informant.
A trusted, confidential informant.
They had a credible source, one of their good sources.
Their most credible paid FBI informant.
We have determined that whistleblower is extremely credible.
The details come from an FBI informant who is very trusted.
A highly reliable informant that has always checked out all the information he's ever given us has checked out.
A confidential human source that had been reliable previously to the FBI. A confidential human source gave credible information. This FD 1023 is damning. I do a podcast 3 days a week, Verdict with Ted Cruz. The podcast has gone into the details.
This is a very crucial piece of our investigation.
A very crucial piece of our investigation. I like how they also allowed in there Ted Cruz to drop the fact that he is a part-time senator, full-time podcaster with The Verdict. By the way, reminder that Ted Cruz is up for re-election in 2024. So let's help him out. Let's do him a solid. And let's relieve him of this pesky part-time Senate gig and make him a full-time podcaster by voting him out of the Senate. That aside, now, Jim Jordan, again, he sees the writing on the wall. Jim Jordan's not an idiot, right? He's actually a very cunning liar. He sees that the winds are against him. So he dropped this, my God, this novel-length tweet trying to explain the whole situation. It reads like, I don't know, War and Peace or something like that. Gone with the Wind, so freaking long. The Biden-Harris campaign trolled him by posting this meme. I ain't reading all that. I'm happy for you, though, or sorry that happened. So funny. The Washington Post actually dropped a pretty good, brief, I suppose, or explaining that there are really good reasons, 3 really good reasons to indicate that this impeachment inquiry is just a dead end for Republicans. The interest isn't there. According to Pew Research, just 16% of Americans were following the inquiry at least very closely. A clear majority were following it not too closely or not at all. By contrast, high-quality polling during Trump's impeachment inquiry showed as many as a majority of Americans said they were following the matter very closely, and those saying they were following it not too closely and not at all never eclipsed 40%. So the interest is wildly out of touch. More people were interested in the Trump impeachments and followed it closely than the Biden impeachments. Obviously, the grounds for impeachment are not there. We've covered that again and again. Most Americans do not believe that there were definitely grounds to impeach. So it's not just coming from experts. Most Americans, in terms of their assessment of the situation, don't think that President Biden's conduct actually rises to an impeachable offense. And this one's the most damning. Arguably, far fewer support Biden's removal than supported Trump's. Okay, so again, just to put a fine point on that, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll from just a few weeks ago, when asked, Joe Biden should be removed from office by impeachment for benefiting from his son Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings when he served as vice president. Again, if anything, that question is too generous because it bakes into the premise facts, not in evidence, which is this idea that Joe Biden benefited from Hunter Biden's business dealings, and when Republicans have provided no evidence for that. But it just assumes the premise, and only 35% total say they support it. 9% of Democrats, 66% of Republicans, only 31% of independents. Folks, this thing is dead in terms of just its political viability. It's dead. It is infinitely less robust, infinitely less merited than any of the Trump impeachments. And Americans seem to recognize this. So I don't think Republicans would have the votes to impeach President Biden anyway. They have a 3 or 4 seat majority in the House of Representatives. 18 of sitting Republicans are operating in Biden districts, right? So they would probably suffer enormously in their reelection campaigns. And then, of course, even if they got all that anyway, Joe Biden will not be convicted in the Senate, which requires a 2/3 majority. So this whole thing is a sham. It's a joke. It deserves nothing but your contempt and disdain. And you can see it on James Comer and Jim Jordan's face. I mean, just the chagrin, the embarrassment, the half-hearted defense of it. But to the extent that it is politically useful to club Republicans over the head with this politically, I think we should. So let me know what you think in the comments.